Hey guys, so today I'll be talking about integrating ABM and Demand Gen and how to drive the targeted growth in your target accounts. So first of all, we're going to go for our story on why you should integrate ABM and Demand Gen, especially when you're going up market, and two ways how I see one can do this. Um, to integrate ABM and Demand Gen for outbound-led inbound. Um, we're going to talk about demand gen capture versus demand gen content. So how does the content that really generates demand look like, as opposed to the one that just harvests existing demand from the accounts? And some delivery channels and useful tools as usual. So yeah, let's dive straight in. Have your boss ever told you your department is siloed? This is like an actual footage of my boss telling me that. Not a nice thing to hear, definitely, as a head or VP of marketing. But that is a fact for a lot of marketing teams that before introducing like this unified account-based marketing motion, the marketing department lives in silos grouped around different channels. So you have your content team, your cold search ads, your social media, remarketing, outbound, webinars, you name it, living separately. And somewhere there may be demand gen, which is mostly used for inbound. And the whole team kind of lives on a prayer, hoping that leads come through their funnels and they hit their KPIs. After introducing ABM as our kind of single common denominator, this is what our marketing department looks like. Every function, every channel feeds into our account-based motion. So we don't see it as a separate channel. We see it as a strategy. For us, a strategy to go up market and to target these larger, more promising accounts that we know are going to generate more ACV. Yeah, and after 6 months of running ABM, I can brag about some results here already. So these are results from a couple of days ago. They have actually changed already. We have already over a 1,700,000 in open pipeline. Out of that, we closed nearly 250,000 already. So a pretty good close rate as well. Clearly, the ABM strategy is working for us. Also, the ACV, we were aiming at 25K. We're just under 24K. So, like I'm pretty happy with how it's going. But let's see how we actually managed to achieve it. But first things first, what is demand gen? What is ABM? And why should you integrate them? So demand gen is a strategy focused on generating interest and demand for a product or service, as opposed to capturing it. So you need to kind of educate the market, educate your prospects, and spark the interests in them in something that they haven't considered before. Lots of SaaS companies use demand generation tactics only for inbound marketing. I mentioned that already, and that is a problem if your ACV is growing, if your product is becoming more complex and enterprise, because basically there are a lot fewer of these accounts in the market currently that are just going to fall through your inbound funnels, sign up for your webinars, like read your blog posts. If they don't have the demand for your product or service, how would they? They wouldn't be searching for your solution. So it's hard to go upmarket and increase your ACV if you're relying only on inbound leads, inbound demand generation. Because when it comes to company sizes, there are only so many of these big whales that are currently in the market, and the rest is just, not currently searching for a solution. So you need to proactively reach out to them and educate them. And that's where ABM comes in, account-based marketing, which is a B2B strategy where sales and marketing teams, both aligned, collaborate to focus on specific high-value accounts or companies. And now these can be either specific account lists where you have named accounts, identified accounts, or these can be specific criteria where you don't know exactly which companies you will be targeting, but you know what are their common denominators. So company size, demographics, industry, technology, technographics, etc. ABM and demand gen is what I like to call in unison outbound-led inbound, because you kind of start from the outbound strategy, you define the accounts, you define the market you want to penetrate, but then you use inbound tactics to generate demand and generate interest in these accounts. This is beautiful because the accounts are kind of thinking that they came for inbound out of their own free will, based on seeing your content, engaging with your resources, but in fact, it was all planned. Now, if you still want to capture demand, you don't want to just, you can still capture your demand. You don't just generate demand, you will still harvest a lot of that demand. So it's not either or. But you need to also think of how you're going to be generating demand in these high value accounts, because as I said, there are only so many that you can harvest demand from and that are in the market. Let's dive straight in. So I already mentioned between the lines these two methods. One is Emergent ABM, where you create content, target the industries and company sizes with broad targeting, for instance, on LinkedIn, and then you de-anonymize their engagements to see which companies engaged most with your content, and this will inform your list building. This will inform your further remarketing efforts, retargeting. You just don't plain retarget website visitors, you retarget specific companies that visited your website, that engaged with your LinkedIn ads, and that fit the criteria that you set for your ABM, for your upmarket strategy. The second method is when you have a targeted ABM, so you have a named account list. These can be lookalikes of your best performing accounts, of your recently closed won enterprise accounts that you know are a good fit. So let's look at the first method, the Emergent ABM method. I included a screenshot of LinkedIn targeting. What you do is you basically define the roles that you want to target, or specific job titles. You define the industries, you define the company size, you include the right company sizes, and you exclude the ones that don't fit. Then you run your ads, and you can use tools for de-anonymizing the ad engagements on LinkedIn, likes and ABM. Hey, I've built this tool, so I know a thing or two about it. Build it for ourselves at Userpilot because I couldn't find a tool that would do that. So what it does, it captures the ads engagements from your LinkedIn, and it pushes them to your HubSpot. So it actually de-anonymizes them and creates company lists in your HubSpot that you can further filter by company size, industry, you name it, by certain technographic features. How you do it? You best do it with Clay. So what we do, we have the professional plan at Clay, and we basically push all the lists from HubSpot back into Clay, and we have several filters, and we use certain APIs, like built with API for harvesting the technographic data as well in Clay. So we can, for instance, see which of the companies that have been engaging with our ads are also using our competitors. These are typically the accounts that are the easiest to convert, and then we know what to talk to them about. So collecting the intent signals is also super important. Now, this was the Emergent ABM strategy. When you look at the targeted ABM, the first step is targeting. So you need to look at the accounts in your CRM that are already kind of representative of your most successful potential customers. So how do you define the most successful potential accounts? First, you need to look at the target ACV. So what does it mean for you to go up market? It can mean a minimum contract value of 20,000, but it can mean 40,000 or even 100,000 or even 1 million, depending, of course, on your company. So you define that, and you look at all the accounts with this contract value that you closed in the last period of time that would be representative of what your solution and what your sales process looks like now. So let's say the last 6 to 12 months. You create a pool of these accounts in your HubSpot or in your CRM, whatever you're using, Salesforce, HubSpot, most likely. You push them into Clay, and then you can use these other APIs for creating lookalike account lists. For instance, Ocean AI, this is the one we are using at Userpilot, but there are other tools. For instance, KeyPlay, we have trialed it in the past, that again, use AI to find lookalike accounts. What works best though is doing it by hand. I've learned the hard way in the past. Like our top performing campaign is the one where we literally sat down on an offsite as the whole team. We went for G2, we went for the company websites, and we manually selected the companies. Why? I mean, it's super, super time consuming. Don't kid yourself, it's not. When you're building a list of 2,000 or 5,000 companies, reviewing all of them manually seems impossible. But it's still better than doing it with AI. AI helps a lot. It has like 80% accuracy rate, but what happens is that you get a lot of false positives. So if you set rules in your Clay that, hey, scrape the company websites and return the companies that mention they have a mobile app on their website, or they have a login for a free trial, you will still get a lot of companies that do have this information on their website, but it's completely irrelevant to what you are searching for, because maybe they're a service company that has a login area for their customers. We had this problem a bit with using OpenAI API for building lists in Clay. So just full disclosure, if you have the time, if you have the resources, still review the lists manually. The list is your strategy. Why I'm spending so much time talking about it, because it's really, really important. Okay, and once you have created your list, you decide on your revenue goal, and this in turn will inform your goals. So you will know how many accounts you need to close, and then you can reverse engineer from there and basically realize how many deals you need to create, how many pre-ops, so demos you need to generate, how many then people you need to drive to your landing pages from the ads, and with your basically conversion rate from the landing pages that you're using, you will know how many you need to have at the top of the funnel. And then with your average CTR from the ads, you know how many clicks you need to get. And then based on the clicks and based on your average cost per click, you can actually calculate your budget. There you go. Then step 2, you need to score your accounts, the ones that you basically funnel into your ads. And then after getting feedback from a tool like Sales and ABM on what ads they're engaging with, how much they're engaging with, like how many clicks did you get, how many engagements did you get, and all the other information from your CRM, you create account scoring. Again, we're using Clay to do this. And then basically you sort the accounts that are in your ABM campaign by the highest score. And what do you do with them? Okay, so here are still, I forgot to mention some signals that we use for account scoring. We look if the accounts were previously in the sales process. We look at trial, demo, disco calls that happened previously, so any former MQLs. We look at previous PQLs, so the accounts that signed up for the trial, what was their activity, any partnership activity, any competitors used, we use build with, and social posts engagement to gauge that. Recent hiring for relevant roles always signals that they may be in the market for buying tools. 10K for operational initiatives, website visits, lead magnet webinar, event signups on your end. So there is a wealth of information in your CRM already that you can use for your account scoring. And then, as I mentioned, you sort your accounts, you operationalize it all in Clay, so you get the scores. You push the scores back to HubSpot or your CRM, you sort the accounts, and then you segment the accounts by shared intent, right? Why is that important? Because you want to use the shared intent from your account scoring, so you understand which features, which particular jobs to be done this particular account is interested in order to retarget them with the right next layer campaigns, and in order to capture that intent on account level and then use it to funnel the accounts to the right BDR sequences. Why? First, people don't like when BDRs reach out to them and they kind of don't know what they're talking about, right? It's a different story when the BDR knows exactly what to talk to the prospect. And it's different when the prospect has already seen and engaged with some ads that are relevant to this intent. So it's this kind of like infinite loop of reinforcing what the prospect really is interested in. And then it's a completely different conversation when the outreach is not cold, but it's warm and is very, very relevant. Right. You can capture the granular intent from your LinkedIn ads. Again, like we're using the tool we've built for this, and basically group the campaigns by common content. So the jobs to be done, the benefits, the features that we're pushing in these campaigns. And then we push that intent as a company property back into HubSpot. Yeah, I already talked about capturing intent from campaigns, so let's dive. We don't have a lot of time left, so let's dive straight into the content that you can create to generate demand. So what is the difference between content for capturing demand and for generating demand? Demand capture is when your audience already knows about your product. They are, problem aware, solution aware, and even product aware, right? So they are in the market. Maybe they're just like problem and solution aware. Maybe they're not product aware yet. So you want to inform them that your product provides the answer to their questions, that your product provides the solution to their problem. And the most powerful way to do it is by using social proof, by using case studies, by using some testimonials from your customers that achieved a very specific result. Here you can see some great examples of such content from Cognism, from Clay, where they use testimonials and specific results that their customers achieved. Here are some more examples. Clay, again, quotes from well-known companies, how they used Clay to achieve their results. And what else works for demand capture? When your accounts are already in the market, they are problem solution product aware, they may be using your competitors. You have identified it in the previous step. Remember, built with API in Clay, easy. You then go to town on their competitors. Of course, respectfully, you don't want to end up in a lawsuit, but basically you can highlight the differences. You can explain how your product is better than the product they're currently using, because from their engagements with your ads, it clearly seems that they're already interested. So you don't want to waste time on these accounts that are showing this high level of engagement and to try to generate demand in them. You want to put them straight into the demand capture follow-up campaign and harvest that demand based on testimonials and based on comparisons with the incumbent solutions they're using. Right, now let's look at the demand gen content. The layer of your audience that you haven't been able to identify any buying intent in, but you have been able to identify the accounts that they, may be interested in the problem, or you just created this lookalike list of accounts based on your top performing accounts with the highest ACV or the target ACV. And the winning formula here is, from my experience, a specific result plus the tool or solution that was used to achieve the result plus social proof. So who achieved this result? Basically, how company X achieved result Y with tool or solution Z. And let's see how some great companies that I'm following on LinkedIn have executed this. So you can see there are different types of ads. There are different types of content that works great for this on LinkedIn. One of them is thought leadership ads. Here are some examples, actually the ones that we used in our campaigns at Userpilot. These are ads either from well-known influencers that we promoted ourselves, that were pushing the audience towards an event ran or led by this influencer, or our own internal influencers, thought leadership content on certain problems, topics that we know the audience will care about. I think I skipped one slide. Yeah, this is an example of some webinar content. More examples of influencer thought leadership content, this time living on the blog. This can be a landing page for the thought leader ads, basically these case studies or breakdowns, teardowns on how a specific customer achieved a specific result with the tool. And when it comes to campaign content and organization, once you have created all these assets, right, you grouped them by intent, you group them into these different campaigns, be it if you want to do Emergent or if you want to do this more like targeted ABM demand generation campaigns. You still need to keep experimenting and optimizing, right? So looking at your ads regularly and pruning the ones that are underperforming, that your audience may not be interested in, is very, very important. We do that on a weekly basis. We basically look at the ads that are performing below our benchmark of 0.35% CTR. And if they're underperforming for I think 2 weeks in a row, we basically clip them out. And yeah, just a parting thought, if you match the content with the intent well, a lot of your target companies will actually start converting directly from your content, from your ads through inbound. And that's how outbound-led inbound works, that you don't need to engage your expensive human resources, your BDRs, to do this thorough research. You can basically automate this process. And they don't need to educate the accounts one-on-one. The accounts already come educated. They may be helpful in the final stages of the conversation, but they're not necessary to do all this grunt work at the beginning. Performance and metrics, just one last thing. We measure progression for ABM stages versus the percentage of campaign completion. So we have certain benchmarks for the campaign. We want a certain percentage of the accounts to move to the interested stage, the considering stage, the selecting stage. And we track that based on the percentage of the campaign completion. So if the campaign is running for 3 months, after each week, we know that, hey, the campaign is a certain percentage through, is the percentage of the accounts that we expected to have moved through the stages, moving through the stages. We look at the conversion rate to pipeline. So how many accounts we have in pipeline versus the total number of accounts. This is a very small number, usually, with the one-to-many campaigns. And a very important metric, leading metric, pipeline per dollar spent. So based on what I mentioned before in terms of setting goals, you need to know what kind of pipeline you need to generate with your qualification rates and with your conversion rate to closed won in order to hit your revenue targets. So based on that, you also know how much budget you have to spend on your specific ABM campaigns. So you basically divide the target pipeline by the target budget that you have for the campaign, and that gives you the pipeline per dollar spent. So it's a metric that you can track throughout the campaign to see if it's performing well in terms of driving qualified pipeline from the budget. Even if you're hitting your pipeline, but the pipeline per dollar spent is low, you may not be able to actually, hit the final mark, the final target pipeline number, because you will run out of budget and you will need to increase it. So something to keep in mind. It's slightly skewed towards the end of the campaign because, at first, you need to penetrate the accounts. You need to make sure that the accounts get enough impressions in order to start converting. So, typically you start seeing the pipeline per dollar spend kind of in a more representative way, more or less halfway through or 2/3 through the campaign. And then, of course, you track your ROAS, so return on ad spend. That's a very lagging metric, so it's good to keep these leading metrics in mind. Right, tools that I mentioned, just a quick recap. We use Skale for list building, account scoring. With our CRM, we pay around $800 per month, plus additional credits we pay as we go, so I can't tell you off the top of my head, it depends. HubSpot marketing, we pay around $1,850 per month. We could probably be spending less because we're not doing matched audiences anymore, contact level targeting. We're using broad targeting. So we don't need to be paying extra for the marketing contacts. And we use an ABM for this account intent identification and account identification, especially if we're running retargeting ads on certain website visits and we don't know who visited the websites and if they fit our, outbound kind of company size and fit criteria. That's a free beta for you, but it's not an expensive solution. So bonus, if you want to read our full story and the guide for ABM setup step by step, I included a link here in the QR code to that. Hopefully you will find it helpful. I've outlined, everything I talked about today in a bit more detail because I do realize that was a lot for 25 minutes. So I hope I didn't lose you here. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect and would love to continue the conversation if you have any questions.
Hey, Emilia, this was a massive amount of information for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
It was great, and I'm sure that everyone is going to love it, and they're going to rewatch it for sure because there is definitely a lot of information. The thing that I memorized the most is the list is your strategy. That was like the main tagline of the presentation. I don't know, but we have some questions.
So
we have a question. Do you collect segments at the personal or company level?
Segments, company level. Everything is on company level. This is account-based marketing. So we don't have any personal level information. You can use tools if your audience is mainly in the US and in specific states, right? The laws there, privacy laws differ state by state. But you can use our B2B or Vector to de-anonymize your website visitors and see like personal level information. Again, like this only works for about 30% of the visitors. So it will be very few.
Someone wrote, can we have this presentation after the talk? We haven't spoken about this, but if they want a presentation, okay, they can reach out to you, or maybe they can reach out to marketing@scale.so and we can send them. So they can get the presentation for sure. And we have one comment, Zen ABM versus Fibbler. So one of our speakers, Adam, he's a founder of Fibbler. And I don't know, maybe someone wanted to know your opinion about Zen ABM versus Fibbler. I don't know if you use Fibbler.
Yeah, we have used Fibbler. We still use it. We use it for impression capping right now, a very useful feature as well. Actually Fibbler was kind of, the starting. It wasn't the starting point because I was looking for a solution. I reviewed a lot of solutions for this de-anonymization. I reviewed Hockey Stack, Dream Data, and essentially at the end, we ended up using Fibbler. The problem was that Fibbler is a wrapper for Campaign Manager, right? So it couldn't do certain demographic pivots, basically, in order for us to know, for instance, which companies engaged with which campaigns, and the other way around, like per company was the list of all the campaigns, all the campaign groups that this company engaged in. And besides, like analytics and this intent tagging, this took us easily 5 months to work out all the workflows. So there's a ton of RevOps that needs to be done if you're using solutions like Fibbler. So, what I'm trying to do here is basically reduce the amount of RevOps that is required. So for instance, the intent labeling can happen based on campaign engagements per company. You group the campaigns and you say, hey, this group of campaigns means that the company has analytics intent, right? And you push that back on account level to HubSpot. You don't need to build massive workflows for that. So this was the main difference. And we're using both tools for different purposes, actually.
Yeah, I think that was a great insight for Adam as well, if he's listening to this right now. So I'm definitely sure they're working on upgrades of the tool. We need to wrap up the session because we have another guest. But Emilia, thank you for being our guest, and I see that people are blown away with your presentation in the comments. So have a great day, and I hope to see you soon, maybe next year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.